1930s, the Soviet Union. After investigation reveals that some members of the former Bolshevik Party question Joseph Stalin's authority and that there is a network of party members supposedly working against him, Stalin believes anyone with ties to the Bolsheviks or Lenin's government is a threat to his leadership and needs to go. The killing and imprisonment starts with members of the Bolshevik Party, political officials, and military members, but is soon expanded to include peasants, ethnic minorities, foreigners, ordinary citizens, scientists, intellectuals, writers, and artists. The regime is frantically trying to stamp out anything that resembles criticism, and those who criticize Stalin are imprisoned and murdered. One of them is a famous Russian actress, Zinaida Reich. Zinaida Nikolaevna Reich was born on the 3rd of July, 1894, in the village of Bliznia Melnitsy near Odessa, then part of the Russian Empire. Her mother was a Russian noblewoman, and her father, August Reich, a Roman Catholic who accepted Orthodox Christianity in order to marry Zinaida's mother, worked as a sailor and a railroad engineer. In the then Tsarist autocracy, August Reich was an early social democrat, and as he continued his democratic activity during the Russian Revolution of 1905, the family was exiled from Odessa to Bendery, where Zinaida Reich studied in a gymnasium, but was expelled for political reasons before completing the last, 8th grade. She then enrolled in the Kiev higher education courses for women, and in 1913 became a member of the Socialist-Revolutionary Party, which endorsed the overthrow of the Tsar and the redistribution of land to the peasants. Soon, Zinaida moved to Petrograd, today's St. Petersburg, and entered the History Literature faculty of the Raevsky higher courses, where she studied foreign languages and took sculpture classes. Continuing her studies at the courses, Zinaida worked as a secretary typist in the editorial office of the Socialist-Revolutionary newspaper Delo Naroda, meaning the People's Cause. Since early 1917, Russia had been in a state of turmoil, and in February 1917, the Tsarist government's poor management of World War I had helped to inspire a popular uprising, which became known as the February Revolution. This first component of the Russian Revolution forced the abdication of Tsar Nicholas II and placed in a powerful provisional government of liberal and socialist factions, ultimately under the leadership of Socialist-Revolutionary Party member Alexander Kerensky. This brief experiment with a pluralist democracy was a chaotic one, and in the summer months, the continual deterioration of the war effort and increasingly dire economic situation caused Russian workers, soldiers, and sailors to riot. On the 24th to 25th of October 1917, Bolshevik left-wing socialist forces under Vladimir Lenin seized key government buildings and stormed the Winter Palace, then the seat of the new government in Russia's capital, Petrograd, today St. Petersburg. The Bolshevik Revolution, also referred to as the Great October Socialist Revolution, was the first successful Marxist coup in history. During this chapter of the Russian Revolution, the ineffectual provincial government was dislodged and ultimately replaced with a Soviet Socialist Republic under Lenin's leadership. After Lenin's death in 1924, Joseph Stalin succeeded him as the leader of the Soviet Union. At this time, Zinaida Reich was already a married woman, as in spring 1917, while working for the Socialist-Revolutionary newspaper, Zinaida, then 22 years old, met Sergei Yesenin, who had his poems published in the newspaper. They soon fell in love, got married in August of the same year, and had 2 children, a daughter Tatiana and a son Konstantin. However, Zinaida and Sergei subsequently quarreled and lived separately for some time prior to their divorce in autumn 1921. In 1922, while still a student, Zinaida Reich married a theatre director, Vsevolod Meyerhold, who adopted her children Tatiana and Konstantin, loved them, and took care of them like their own father. Sergei Yesenin, Zinaida's first husband, frequently came to their apartment in Moscow to visit his children. However, Yesenin, who was in a state of depression, committed suicide by hanging on the 23rd of December, 1925. Zinaida's life, however, took a different direction, as she would become an actress and a star of the Meyerhold Theatre, which her new husband had founded in 1920. Zinaida Reich made her debut on the stage of the Meyerhold Theatre in January 1924. However, not everyone accepted that a young actress with no experience had become the star of a famous theatre, and when Meyerhold first suggested that he would make Reich a great actress, Anatoly Marianov, a Russian poet and playwright, said he might as well invent electric lamps. Marianhoff, allegedly the homosexual lover of her first husband, also wrote that one needed no talent to become a famous actress, only Meyerhold as a husband, and idiots as the public. The actor, Igor Ilensky, was so upset that Reich received all the major roles that he left the Meyerhold Theatre, but later revised his opinion of her acting talent and appreciated her. According to the memoirs of her contemporaries, Zenaida Reich was an affable person who tried to help others in an unostentatious and selfless way, encourage those who had hard times, and inspire hope. Meyerhold sincerely loved his wife, did everything to make her the only star of his theatre, and Zenaida became one of the most famous Moscow actresses, though during the 13 years of work in the theatre, she only played a little more than 10 roles. In the 1934 play, The Lady of the Camellias, in which Reich played the leading role, she was watched by Joseph Stalin, who did not like the performance. Soon, criticism fell upon Meyerhold with accusation of aestheticism. Zenaida Reich wrote a letter to Stalin stating that he did not understand art. Zinaida Reich, by then an extraordinarily popular, independent, outspoken and famous actress, even said, "If Stalin does not understand anything in art, let him ask Meyerhold." The Soviet dictator did not forget this remark, and Zenaida Reich became Stalin's enemy, one who had to go, like possibly over 1 million other citizens throughout the Soviet Union, as alleged enemies of the people during the Great Purge when they were imprisoned and tortured by the NKVD, the Soviet Secret Service, between August 1936 and March 1938. In the early 1930s, Joseph Stalin launched a campaign to bring Soviet artists a heel and compel them all to observe the rules of socialist realism, which precluded avant-garde art and experimentation, and any art form reckoned to be formalist in that the artist had paid more attention to the form of a work than its political message. In March 1936, Meyerhold evidently surmised that he would soon be a target, delivered a talk entitled Meyer Against Meyerholdism, in which he said, reportedly to thunderous applause, that the path to simplicity is not an easy one. Each artist goes at his own pace, and they must not lose their distinctive way of walking. Soviet subject matter is often a smokescreen to conceal mediocrity. In December 1937, Stalin's crony, Lazar Kaganovich, went to a production at the Meyerhold Theatre and walked out in disgust. The theatre was closed by order of the Politburo on the 7th of January 1938 on the grounds that throughout its entire existence, the Meyerhold Theatre has been unable to free itself from thoroughly bourgeois formalist positions. His works were proclaimed antagonistic and alien to the Soviet people. The ailing Konstantin Stanislavski, who was the director of an opera theatre, now known as Stanislavski and Nemirovich Danchenko Theatre, invited Meyerhold to be his assistant, an invitation that surprised many in Moscow, given their long-standing artistic differences. Stanislavski died soon afterwards in August 1938, and his dying wish was, "Take care of Meyerhold. He is my sole heir in the theatre, here or anywhere else." On the 17th of June 1939, Zinaida's husband Vsevolod Meyerhold addressed a conference of theatre directors in the presence of Andrei Vyshinsky, the state prosecutor who had presided over the infamous Moscow show trials, the following: "If what you have been doing with the Soviet theatre recently is what you call anti-formalism, if you consider what is now taking place on the stages of the best theatres in Moscow as an achievement of the Soviet theatre, then I would prefer to be what you consider a formalist. In hunting formalism, you have eliminated art." He was arrested 3 days after the speech, on the 20th of June, 1939. 25 days later, on the night of the 14th and 15th of July, Zenaida sent both her children out of the apartment, located in Bryusov Lane in Moscow. The same night, 2 unknown assailants broke into the apartment and brutally attacked Zenaida. They stabbed her 17 times, including near the heart and in the neck and through the eyes. Zenaida Reich was 45 years old when she died by loss of blood on the morning of the 15th of July, 1939, on the way to the hospital. She was buried at a cemetery in Moscow, near the grave of her first husband, Sergei Yesenin. Very few people dared to come to her funeral. Zenaida's daughter, Tatiana, later recalled, "Almost no one came. There were relatives and a few strangers. But of those who always visited her, no one came." Tatiana added, "Nothing was taken from the apartment. They came to kill." The murder is generally regarded as having been organized by the NKVD. The apartment was soon given to the chauffeur of Lavrenti Beria, who was the head of the NKVD. Zinaida's husband, Vsevolod Meyerhold, who was taken to the NKVD headquarters in Moscow, was placed in the hands of Lev Schwarzman, the notorious torturer appointed by Lavrenti Beria. In his final days during the capture, Meyerhold wrote a letter to the Soviet Minister of Foreign Affairs, Vyacheslav Molotov, in which he wrote, "The investigators began to use force on me, a sick 65-year-old man. I was made to lie face down and beaten on the soles of my feet and my spine with a rubber strap. They sat me on a chair and beat my feet from above with considerable force. For the next few days, when those parts of my legs were covered with extensive internal hemorrhaging, they again beat the red, blue, and yellow bruises with a strap, and the pain was so intense that it felt as if boiling water was being poured onto these sensitive areas. I howled and wept from the pain. They beat my back with the same rubber strap and punched my face, swinging their fists from a great height." Meyerhold broke down and confessed to being a British and Japanese spy and was executed on the 2nd of February, 1940. Zenaida Reich's children did survive Stalin's reign of terror. Her daughter Tatiana became a notable writer, and her son Konstantin became a journalist and a prominent football statistician. There were many tears shed for Zenaida Reich and Vsevolod Meyerhold. Thanks for watching the World History Channel. Be sure to like and subscribe, and click the bell notification icon so you don't miss our next episodes. We thank you, and we'll see you next time on the channel.